Up on the screen here, I basically just went to Google Images and I typed in exterior stud wall. So there's thousands of different ways that we could build a wall. Now with my camper, which just happens to be 8 feet wide, they built the wall out of fiberglass panels and probably about 2 inches of foam, maybe 1.5 inches of foam and some studs. So it's a very thin wall, but it doesn't do a very good job of insulating. So if it's 80 degrees outside, somehow it manages to be 95 in my camper without the air conditioning running, which is bad because basically on a hot day, my air conditioner runs nonstop. So what we want to try to do with this tiny house design is come up with some sort of a wall system that isn't going to use that much energy, something that's going to be a little bit more efficient. So I just kind of wanted to go through and show you some different examples of how walls are built. So this right here is a picture of a double stud wall, and the whole purpose of this is to get a whole lot of insulation in there. And if I look at this one, that's basically a double stud wall going in real life. So we got a little diagram of it here, and we have the actual thing going in there. This isn't going to help us out at all. If we're trying to save space, we can't really afford to lose this much space by having a double wall. So we could start looking around at some different ones. This one right here adds a layer of foam to the outside, and then it has foam on the inside. So this one right here, just looking at this, I know that this wall would end up being between 4.5 and 5 inches thick. And it's going to have insulation between and on the surface. So this would be a pretty good option to use. Definitely a lot better than what we were using, the 8-inch. This right here is doing something a little bit different, and it's kind of a hard picture to see there. But basically, this has steel studs, and it's putting a thicker foam on the outside. Now it also has brick, which we want to use, but it's similar to what we might want to use for a wall system. So we can just go through and look at a lot of different wall types. Now, the next thing is, whenever we're building our walls, you also want to notice that there's a lot of stuff that goes in the walls other than insulation. We have piping going in the walls, wiring, boxes for the electrical system, and I wanted to try to find a picture of a standard wall, which I'm having trouble finding. But basically, the way that we built walls for years and years and years, let's see if we can type something else in and see if we get a nice picture. This is how we have built stud walls for the last probably 30 years, 30 or 40 years, since the 70s. So basically they made a stud wall and they put fiberglass insulation in there. Fiberglass insulation, it's not the best insulator. It does a decent job of insulating, but there's a few things that happen. First of all, air and moisture gets in here and it kind of takes away the value of the insulation. This droops. Like if you ever open up an old wall, a lot of times the insulation will be sagging down here, leaving all of this area exposed. The air can pass right through this. So there's a lot of different problems with that. People use this more often than anything because that's the way that it's been done and it's relatively inexpensive. Okay? Alright, so there's a few examples of different wall types. We'll talk more about that. But in Revit, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you how to create a wall. And you guys don't have to follow along with this because I am going to record it. I'll put it on the YouTube channel. You can watch it again and again. So basically, if I want to create my own wall, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Revit, and up here on the Architecture tab, I'm going to click on Wall. Whenever I do that, remember, we have a Properties panel. And if your Properties panel happens to get closed, which it often does with new users, all you have to do is go to the View tab, User Interface, and check mark the Properties panel. Okay? So I'm going to go back to my Architecture tab, and I'm going to look at the wall types. So whenever I click on the wall, this one right here is the default wall type, the basic wall generic 8. So it's 8 inches thick. I don't want to use that. At this point, you guys could go through and create your own custom wall types. And the way that you do that is by clicking on Edit Type. And this screen pops up. And we could go through and we could change the generic 8 right now. I don't want to do that. I want to create an entirely new wall. So instead of editing this right now, I'm going to do a duplicate. So whenever I do the duplicate, it asks me to name it. And I'm going to call this Tiny House Exterior Wall. Give it a nice unique name so that I don't forget what it is whenever I'm looking for it. Then after I have that, you can see that the type is now up here, Tiny House Exterior Wall, and at this point I can click this Edit button to edit the structure of the wall. And whenever I do this, this screen pops up here, Edit Assembly. So right now the only thing that I have in here is an 8-inch structure. I also have these two core boundaries, but they have no thickness. So the core boundary we'll talk about later, but it really matters more about how the wall is dimensioned than anything else. So we're not going to worry about it as much right now. So the first one that I would do, just going to go ahead and do we're going to do a real basic stud wall. Something that's typical. We're going to come over here to the thickness, and instead of 8 inches, we're going to use a 2x4 wall. And the actual width of a 2x4 is 3.5 inches. Okay? On the outside, we're going to, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this number 1. This is the exterior side up here. Click on number 1, and I'm going to insert. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as structure, or I could change it to substrate, which is basically like a piece of plywood. It doesn't really matter. You could leave it as structure if you wanted to. I'm going to change it to substrate. If I want to, I can go into this material and I click on the little button, and now I have all different materials to choose from. And I'm just going to go down through here and I'm going to find plywood. Okay? I say OK. And then on the inside, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to insert another one, and I have to bump it down so that it's on the interior side. And this one, I'm just going to change it to finish. For the finish, I'm going to click on the category again. And this time I'm going to look for what we call gypsum wallboard, GWB. Gypsum wallboard is just another name for drywall. So I click on that, I say OK, and I'm going to make that 1/2 inch thick. All right? On the outside, we're going to look for an exterior finish. And a lot of times the exterior finishes are hard to find in here. We'll click that and start looking down through. We have vinyl siding. They call it something different. I don't think it's in there. We can also go to, let's see, if we open this thing, we can, I basically just clicked on this little button down here, and I can go in here and look at different materials that they have also. It always takes a little while to figure out where that vinyl siding is for me. And I actually what I really want to do is use like a metal siding. There's a million different ones. Let's see if we can find it somewhere else. So under the AEC materials, find siding clapboard, and then there's this little button here. It looks like an arrow pointing up. You click Adds Material to Document. So whenever I do that, now I can actually select that as the material that I want to use. So I select it up here, siding clapboard, and I say OK. Now I have a wall that's basically made out of plywood, and I need to make this 1/2 inch thick. And I have clapboard siding, just vinyl siding, which is 1/2 inch thick. And now I have a wall with a total thickness of 5 inches. Okay? I can say OK. I can say OK again, and now I have a basic wall, tiny house exterior wall. I can start drawing walls with this. And then whenever I look at this in 3D, whenever I go to my View tab, hit the 3D button, I have to come down here to these little buttons, change my visual style to realistic, and now I have a wall with drywall on the outside, vinyl siding, or drywall on the inside, vinyl siding on the outside. Okay, I'm going to show you one more thing. If I want to change this, I can basically click on the wall. Let's say I decided to use some different kind of insulation or some kind of different siding. I can come in here, I can click on that, and I can very easily go through here and pick something else out. I'm trying to find something nice finish. Let's say we use this wood shake. I click on that, I say OK. I say OK, and I didn't change it. Try that one more time. I go in here, I click on the material. Once I find the wood shake, I need to hit the button to make it go up to my project, and then I click on it and say OK. And now I have a building that's made out of wood shakes. And the nice thing about that is you don't have to get tied to using the first wall that you create. So you can design your entire building and then change your wall after the fact, and it's going to update automatically for you.